Mank is directed by David Fincher and written by his late father, Jack Fincher, and is currently on Netflix. It stars Gary Oldman, Amanda Seyfried, and Charles Dance. 1930s Hollywood is reevaluated through the eyes of scathing social critic and alcoholic screenwriter Herman J. Mankiewicz as he races to finish the screenplay for Citizen Kane. I can't really pick a favorite director, but I know that David Fincher is my favorite director to listen to. When it comes to advice, interviews, podcasts, anything like that, I'm jumping on it. If he's going to be talking about film or his routine, how he approaches filmmaking, I'm mesmerized by that. I like that he curses. He's super blunt and honest. He doesn't seem Hollywood at all. He's just a guy who tells it like it is. I adore his advice on movies, and every time I've ever approached making one of my own, I always turn towards his advice, whether it's his film commentaries or interviews that he's done. He's brilliant. I love his movies. He's directed at least 5 of my favorites of all time, but I also love film history. If you've seen my A+ review of Citizen Kane, you know I also love that movie. I was very excited at the notion of David Fincher making a movie about the creation of that film, and I knew that it wouldn't be like any other biopic, and it definitely isn't. Fincher supposedly wanted to make this movie after The Game, but apparently studios didn't want to make a black and white movie with him, which is fucking crazy to me. I mean, imagine like making Seven, and then the studio is like, But we finally can watch the film today, and what I can say about Mank is that a lot of people will not like this movie. A lot of people are going to find it very boring, and there are stretches of the movie that I didn't find myself particularly invested in, but I was floored by the film technically, just as I am with all David Fincher movies. This film was shot in 8K, but the footage was considerably degraded in multiple ways to make it look just like a film that was out of the 30s or 40s. The pristine HD quality of 8K has been blurred significantly. There's cigarette burns added, dust and hairs and cracks in the frames. The sound mix sounds like it's coming from a cathedral. It has an echo to it. And Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score is amazing. It sounds just like an older film. The instruments they chose, everything about this movie, if you just showed it to somebody who had no idea who these actors were, didn't know who David Fincher was, you could probably convince them that it was from the 1930s. Right down to shots of actors against a skyline, you could see like a slight glow around the outline of their bodies, just like older films. There was something just not exactly right about the background composition to the foreground composition, and this film made it look so seamless. I was floored, technically, by this movie, but not really that emotionally invested in the story, unfortunately. Mank is a movie that I'm supposed to love. I'm supposed to love this movie because I love film. David Fincher is one of my favorite directors, Gary Oldman. I love film history. I'm supposed to love Mank, but I didn't. I feel similarly about this film that I did with Tenet. Tenet was also technically marvelous and really jaw-dropping, but emotionally distant. I just didn't really find myself that invested in the characters in Tenet, and it's the same with Mank. Where most biopics work really hard to justify their existence for why they have told a story about a real person, Mank doesn't seem to. Most of the time, he's very drunk, in bed, flirting with women even though he's married, and fighting with Orson Welles over writing credit. And then becoming very engaged in an election that was happening that year where he noticed that certain filmmakers around him were sort of pulling the strings behind the scenes, making propaganda films that seemed to influence the result of that election. So this film has a lot going on. It's talking about the politics of the 1930s in the film business scene specifically, and really nothing outside of it. It is purely about what was going on at MGM Studios and the financial issues, the Great Depression and its effect on MGM and filmmakers in general. And it was fascinating, but I just didn't really find myself that invested. I enjoyed watching this movie. I really did. I loved looking at it. I loved hearing it. I loved all of the actors in the film. Charles Dance especially is really fucking good in this movie. You are going to appreciate it more, or at least understand it a lot more, if you are well-versed in Citizen Kane. If you've seen that movie many times and you understand its structure, the use of flashbacks, This movie does quite a bit as well. The narratives are presented in a similar fashion. The dialogue is often very fast, as has become a Fincher staple since The Social Network. But sometimes it can feel like characters are talking about things that you don't really understand unless you know everything about 1930s Hollywood. And even if you did, it feels sort of like a hangout movie. Aside from the glorious technical presentation, it doesn't really feel like the movie is doing a lot to earn our interest in its characters. So why did I enjoy watching it if I wasn't really all that invested in the narrative? Because I love film. I love film history. I love directing. And this movie has a lot of that. And it feels like something that I can study. It just doesn't feel like something I can enjoy watching again. I'm going to give Mank a B. It'll probably get nominated for a lot of Oscars, and I think it absolutely deserves cinematography, sound editing, directing. I just don't really know that I will ever watch it again, which is so strange since I love Fincher so much. Nevertheless, I'm glad he got to make it. I know this was a major passion project for him, especially since his late father wrote it. And I'm glad that I watched it. So, I don't know. It's on Netflix. It's not much of an investment to watch the film. And I think that, especially if you know of Citizen Kane and have seen it, that will enhance your experience. But I know of and love Citizen Kane, and it didn't really enhance my experience. It was just like, oh yeah, I get what they're doing. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. And if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.